Russian infantry groups that had advances near Dobropillia are currently being detected and destroyed by the Ukrainian Defense Forces. Lieutenant Colonel Viktor Trehubov, spokesperson of the Operational Command Dnipro, stated this on Espreso TV. While the situation in the Pokrovsk sector and the Russian advance near Dobropillia should not be underestimated, it should not be exaggerated either. A small number of infantry groups penetrated past Ukrainian positions, then joined forces and moved further. This is a small force without heavy equipment. Moreover, this movement on the map reflects a route rather than territory controlled by the Russians. What we see on the map is not under Russian control, but indicates the direction of Russian movement. They are now stuck at the end of this route and are being destroyed there. That is the situation, Trehubov said. The lieutenant colonel explained that the main reason for the rapid Russian advance was a shortage of personnel in Ukrainian units. There are no tanks there. The Russians have only a few small infantry groups. Yes, they managed to slip past Ukrainian positions. This happened because there were not enough people. At the time of the Russian advance, we had an insufficient number of personnel to detect and destroy them, he added. Recall on August the 9th, Deep State reported that Russian forces are attacking Dobropillia with the 132nd Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade, made up mostly of residents from temporarily occupied parts of the Donetsk region and migrants from Central Asia. On August the 12th, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky, ordered additional troops and equipment to be sent to eliminate sabotage groups in the Pokrovsk direction. President Volodymyr Zelenski reported that military briefings on the frontline situation had been presented, including in the Dobropillia and Pokrovsk areas. Dobropillia lies 94 kilometers northwest of Russian-occupied Donetsk and about 22 kilometers north of the embattled town of Pokrovsk. According to the Ukrainian military's Strategic Communications Department, Russian forces are employing infiltration tactics by sending small groups of troops beyond the first line of defense, often incurring significant losses. Strategic Communications Department claimed that this approach, used near Dobropillia, did not result in any breakthrough. In one instance, a small Russian unit bypassed Ukrainian positions and attempted to conceal itself behind the front lines. Strategic Communications Department claimed Russia previously used such tactics near Pokrovsk last week and failed, according to the statement. CNN outlined 5 scenarios for ending the war in Ukraine, but only one of them turned out to be positive for Kiev. However, Ukrainian experts interviewed by Focus believe that there are significantly more promising options and offer their own map of possible outcomes. Scenario 1. The American model, truce without peace. According to military and political expert Dmitry Snegirev, this approach completely suits the Ukrainian side because an official agreement to end the war in the Russian interpretation would automatically mean Russia's victory and Ukraine's defeat, as well as the legal and actual recognition of the captured territories. This is precisely what the Americans are trying to avoid by proposing this option. Scenario number 2. Occupation without recognition. There are examples in world practice when the return of occupied lands took decades. For example, France was able to return territories after 40 years, and Germany reunited after about half a century. That is why, according to Snegirev, the 50-year-old deadline in this scenario is not accidental. This means that Russia does not receive international recognition of its new borders. Scenario 3. Partial territorial concessions. It is likely that the Kherson region, including the regional center, will remain under Ukraine's control. It is clear to both sides that the Dnieper River will become the de facto demarcation line, which is extremely difficult to break through. The situation is similar with the Zaporizhia region. About 30% of the territory will remain under the control of Ukraine, and the city of Zaporizhia itself will not be given up because it is strategically important, says Snegirev. Scenario 4. Kadirov's death. If we have already mentioned the Caucasus, there is another interesting scenario for the end of the war, which is based on the death of Ramzan Kadyrov. Imagine that he dies, and a power struggle begins in Chechnya. This creates internal problems for Russia. In such a situation, people like Prigozhin may appear, who will say that Moscow has been constantly putting pressure on the Caucasus, and perhaps the time will come for the beginning of a third Chechen war, but not in Chechnya, but right in Moscow. Leading expert of the National Institute of Strategic Studies, Ivan Us, believes. Scenario 5. War in the Caucasus and the role of Turkey. If Russia does not attempt to attack the Baltics or Finland, the next possible theatre of war could be Azerbaijan. This would be a serious blow to Russia, especially if the White House signs an agreement creating the Zangezur corridor, which Russia will no longer control. Instead, the United States will control it. If Russia does not take any steps to resolve this situation, the US may begin to control this important corridor, and a NATO naval base will appear in the Caspian Sea, which will be under the Turkish flag. This will be a serious threat to Russia, since Turkey is a powerful NATO member and has significant influence. In this case, Turkey understands that its interests are contrary to Russia's interests, and it may want to change the situation in the region. Turkey has a vision of creating a Turkic world, and it is interested in such regions of Russia as Tatarstan and Bashkortostan. They have rich resources, but are under Russian control, which makes their independence difficult. Scenario 6. Semi-protectorate. Political scientist Alexei Golubutsky names another unlikely but possible scenario for the end of the war. We ourselves agree to the status of a semi-protectorate of Russia. This would mean preserving the symbolic attributes of independence, language, flag, state institutions, but with limited sovereignty in matters of foreign policy. This situation can be compared with the policy of Finland at a certain period of its history. After 15 to 20 years, it was able to withdraw from such agreements. So this is not the worst option in the long term. The expert tells Focus.